Bam. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Well, good afternoon, my fellow Michiganders. Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Garrett Soldano, and I am extremely excited to have Christie Hutcherson on today, a spokesperson and founder of Women Fighting for America. And we are just going to dive right into this, Christie, and we're going to talk about your organization, your experience, what you've been doing, the stuff that you've really been fighting behind the scenes. And you have one hell of a story. So that's why I like to bring you folks on to really get out there and explain what you guys are doing, your goals, and everything else that you've been putting up with all the social media and everything else that you and I were just talking about. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited, Garrett.
Yeah. And so, man, just talking with you briefly before the show and just kind of diving into your background, can you kind of explain how you started this organization, and especially being a geopolitical security expert, and how that all came about?
Yeah. So my private life, defense contracting, been in the defense contracting arena for well over 20 plus years, and worked in Washington, D.C. for a very long time. Our federal government, whether it was the Pentagon or whether it was the DLA or DOD or Homeland Security, contracted our firm to do a lot of stuff over the years. And so I had a unique perspective of inside of how things function in Washington, D.C. And I'm also a Christian. And so in 2020, leading up to the presidential election, something had been stirring in my heart, and I didn't know quite what it was. But, I birthed Women Fighting for America out of a conversation I had in a Bible study, quite frankly, with my Lord. And it was to educate without bias. And what I mean by that is to educate the masses on what was at risk for our country back in 2020. It was the height of COVID. There was a lot of things going on. We really started seeing under Obama, and then there was a brief pause, and then Biden, as he was rising up, and the Clintons, of how the deep state, and a lot of that started kind of bubbling to the surface. Those in the insiders in DC, we've known that the deep state existed. So Women Fighting for America was to educate, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent, it didn't matter, because the deep state crosses all party lines. And it was undermining the foundation of this country, of our Judeo-Christian values, our principles that were founded of this country, the constitutional republic that we stand on. And so that's how Women Fighting for America came about. And then 2 weeks into the Biden administration, I had a friend call me up to ask me to go down to Yuma, Arizona. And before I do anything, I always say, God, is this where my time, talents, and treasures will be best utilized? And he said, Christie, not only do I want you to go down to the border to Yuma, I want you to take a small elite team with very special skill sets, because that's my background. And so me and some really incredible fellas flew down into Tijuana, Mexico. And we started driving the full 3,000 miles of the southern border 2 weeks into the Biden administration. I'm probably the only team that have done that. A lot of the information, a lot of the intel that your listeners have heard on secular media and other organizations and reporters have come from our clandestine work and our intel that we've put out there about what's been going on from the beginning of the Biden regime.
Well, that's crazy you say that, because I was deplatformed off of YouTube a couple of years back for exposing exactly what you're talking about, where people just at the border videotaping all of these people coming over, the invasion that we said, and they deplatformed me along with my 250,000 followers for hate and misinformation. And I'm like, what? This is happening, right? So you literally were on the ground, boots on the ground, discovering these things. And like you said, you went down and also to the northern border, if I read, right? You went down.
Yeah, we've done well over 125 missions on our borders, me and my teams. Again, we do a lot of things kind of under the radar. We've intercepted cartels. We've intercepted them bringing over high value targets, which are terrorists. We've rescued children literally out of the hands of the cartel. The videos and the pictures that are on our phones would make most grown men cry. The atrocities that we've witnessed and seen is horrific. We've uncovered sophisticated tunnel systems. It was interesting because I was watching, I guess, a couple months ago, some friends of mine said, "Hey, did you see Fox?" And I'm like, well, we've already uncovered these highly sophisticated tunnels. And we've put that out there. And if you were following me or you go to our website, you can see a lot of these videos that were, when we go live, we go live, and sometimes we can't. It just depends on our operation. And so we believe wholeheartedly from our experience, our professional experience, when you look at specifically, for example, some of these tunnels that we have found, the cartels didn't have this type of technology, nor did they have this kind of, they're not smart enough to be able to build, tunnels that are 4.5 football fields long with fortified wall ceilings, 25 feet underneath the ground with fiber optics and rail systems and stuff that they have. They had to get that technology and that knowledge from terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. And so we've uncovered training camps that they've been working together and training together in Mexico and in Colombia and other places. So I was so thrilled that we finally got President Trump back into office. And I'm so thrilled that they have Tom Homan, which I personally know and have become friends with. He's an incredible individual. And we've worked together at the border numerous times over the last couple of years. And so finally, we're going to see our border secure and these criminals and these terrorists rounded up.
Amen to that. Can we go into some of these specific missions and stuff, especially with the child trafficking? Like, you were involved with these types of ops where you said you rescued children. Can you talk about one of those instances? Can we break that down?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so when we're down there at the border and we're looking at and gathering information and intel, because that's really what this was for us. It was more of fact finding to figure out what was going on, how they were doing this, where they were crossing, where the illicit activity. We are honing in on really the gotaways. We've worked with sheriffs and U.S. Marshals and Border Patrol. We don't go down there without, collaborating and with local law enforcement or those agencies who knew we were going to be down there. So we're not some rogue kind of organization just going down there and being, yeehaws. We know what the hell we're doing. And so during these operations, we would identify stash houses in Mexico on the other side of the border. And so we were watching, through night vision goggles or our highly sophisticated drones, we were watching how they were bringing in either high value targets or sometimes women and children. And our teams aren't going to sit by and do nothing. I can promise you that. So we were able to intercept some of these children who they were bringing in with their handlers through the border systems and be able to extract them from those individuals, separate them, and then, of course, turn them over to the proper authorities.
What were the youngest children? How old were they?
Oh, as young as 6 to 8 years of age. We've even seen, unfortunately, little children, like babies, decapitated heads and things like that. Just atrocities.
Now, do you guys ever get involved in any firefights with the cartels or anything like that? I mean, they're not just going to hand these kids over when they've got a high value target, because you really don't hear about this any in the media at all. Anything like that happen?
We've encountered cartels who try to utilize force, but again, our teams are really well trained, and we mitigate risks before we go in, so we understand where we're going. We understand how they operate and how they will engage. And so we preemptively engage them to let them know you don't want to basically F with our team because it won't bode well for you.
Is now that the Trump administration is in, obviously getting things done with Tom Homan, are you guys still doing the border stuff, or now that we have the right leadership in place, that's kind of been handed over with the people who are going to get things done?
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be down there like we were doing operations, but one of the things I think that needs to have happen, a couple of years ago when Governor Ducey was still the governor of Arizona, which I believe when things flush out, he's a very corrupt governor. But our teams brought solutions to the border. So this is about how can we secure and protect and defend our sovereignty. So through our experience as government contractors and how we solve issues and big problems for countries, not just America, but for countries outside with our security apparatus, being able to utilize these tools. So we created what we call the virtual wall, and it's a multi-layered system that's kind of a force multiplier to stop the bleed. And we rolled this program out we were invited to Governor Ducey's, to the governor's mansion, and to roll this out to senators and sheriffs. Tom Homan was on that call because he understood, and we showed him the program, and he was like, this is exactly what needs to have happen. So he was on there to advocate for our solution. And it fell on deaf ears for a lot of reasons. You've got people jockeying for the grant money and the money and just BS stuff to build more prisons, which didn't really need to happen. We didn't need to build more prisons if we're actually securing the border at that time. So it was a political hotbed. So they didn't activate our solution, which would have saved countless billions of dollars probably at this point. But so when you look at how we can utilize multi-layers to stop this, I believe Tom Homan is implementing a lot of this because now he has the full force of the federal government and the military behind him. And so we're not needing to be down there as much, but I think that there needs to be a public-private partnership. And the reason why I say that is because there's so many hundreds of thousands of really bad players in our country. We don't have the manpower. The sheriff's department, the local agencies, the state agencies, and the federal agencies don't have enough manpower. So I think that we need to be able to be deputized. We need to be very careful of who wins these contracts. They have to understand the sensitive nature of how you round up these type of criminals. I know Kennedy International Logistics and Services, which I'm a CSO of, is one of those agencies who could do this flawlessly, as well as companies like Patriot Mountain. So we've worked with them in the past, but it's going to take a village, so to speak. I hate to use that word, but it is, to round up all of these bad guys.
No, you're right. The logistical nightmare that the Biden administration has basically developed over the past several years with allowing the millions upon millions of illegals in here. And we know that there's a lot of bad people. You've witnessed it personally. The bad people has come over here. It's a monumental task. I mean, it really is. It's almost overwhelming when you think about it, because if you think about that many people and what it's going to take to move and find and then relocate, it just goes on. And as we are well aware of, not everything's going to be black and white. Unfortunately, like you've witnessed, there are children involved, and they've snuck these children over without parents or guardians. And so it's going to be, and we all know what the left's doing. They're waiting patiently in the background for that one little situation to happen where they can exploit it and vomit on their evil, corrupt corporate media. That's for sure. Thank God Elon Musk bought Twitter, because we can't have intelligent conversation, and free speech is alive and well over there. I want to get into, you said that you spoke at the UN. And what did that speech consist of?
So I was invited to speak at the United Nations, both in New York and Vienna, and it was on counterterrorism and anti-human trafficking, specifically how in the civil society world, when you have destabilizations in countries, and specifically like war zones, that goes hand in hand with massive human trafficking. And I think most of the free Western world doesn't understand that. So when you have a destabilized climate and then you have war, you have a lot of displaced children and who are vulnerable because their parents have either been killed or they've gotten separated. So it was, I was talking about how we have to be very mindful of when we engage in wars, especially preemptively or during the process, right? For example, we've been in Ukraine for a long time. We've been funneling billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine. Well, we know in Ukraine, there's a ton of children that have gone missing and who, God forbid, unfortunately, have been sold into the sex trade, the labor trade, and the organ harvesting industries. And so we have to, I believe we need to be responsible, and we need to have solutions to prevent these from happening during wars, quite frankly. And that was my speech. And it was surrounding that.
Man, to even think about that, human trafficking, child trafficking, obviously it does not get the attention that it really needs for people to be educated, because I guarantee you, if you showed some of the videos and stuff that you probably saw, it would just rip people's heart out there. Unfortunately, then we probably see action, but they just don't talk about it. It's like the family member you don't want to acknowledge in the corner, but it's happening. I ran for governor a couple of years back, and we had just an amazing force of volunteers. And one of our volunteers was very passionate about this subject because she was indeed, in fact, human trafficking. And to hear her story and see that it still obviously is always on her mind, and the effects that it has, I can't imagine this being still done and what it continues to do. It's just absolutely horrific. We still don't hear about it anymore. It's kind of like it was hot for a while on social media, then it's got real quiet. I mean, where are we at with that right now, Christie? I mean, obviously with Homan being involved in Trump, is it getting better? Is it the same?
Well, with the military presence at the border, it's going to slow down that industry quite a lot. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing, the uptick of cartels saying, hey, we're going to go out there and we're going to start engaging with our military and fire upon them and engage with them, which is unprecedented because they know they're going to lose that fight every time. Let me bring this home to everybody for your backyard. So a year and a half ago, me and my team got some information and intel in two different places. One was in Oakland, California. So we went there to do and gather. So before we do anything, we have to go and we have to do some recon, right? So we have to make sure and verify that it's legitimately happening. What's really happening? How are they operating? What is their MO? How are they engaging? So we went and we took a team, and I personally go on these missions. And we were there for 3 days and we were observing, and we called it Operation Schoolyard. And the reason why it was called Operation Schoolyard, because I think most of the time when people think about human trafficking, it evokes the MS-13 guys with the tattoos, the seedy kind of thing. But in reality is that they recruit young men and young girls who are very attractive, who look like the girl next door. They could be a cheerleader. They could be on the sports team. They could be on the math team. They're very good at what they do. And so they target even as young as elementary school, and they bring them in, and they'll, for example, I'll give you a real life example. So there's young boy, he looked like he was 16. In reality, he was about 17 and a half, almost 18. And he went and befriended a young girl who was 12 years old. And he told her he was younger than what he really was. And the parents didn't know about this. Well, they had a relationship, and he treated her really well. Well, then he started bringing her into this seedy world because he's now got her where she's, vulnerable, right? At that age, you just want to please your boyfriend. And so she wanted to please her boyfriend. So he started, pimping her out, so to speak, right? And then he said, well, I need you to now recruit your friends and your girlfriends, but you can't tell anybody. You can't tell your parents, and you got to do this way. So that's what they are doing. They're using these other girls, and then they would start bringing in their girlfriends and their friends. This happens, by the way, not just in Oakland, California. This happens in Michigan. This happens everywhere around the country. And so, most parents will be oblivious to this because there's so much information on that phone, and there's apps that can be hidden from parents. So I think it's really important for you to understand that you have to have control of your child's cell phone. It's not an invasion of privacy. It's to protect your children from these predators who are very sophisticated at what they do. And that's how they get these young boys and girls into the sex trade industry here in the United States.
It almost sounds kind of like what Jeffrey Epstein did with recruiting him. And he targeted vulnerable women or young girls from broken homes and stuff like that, but kind of the same kind of jam where he was paying other people to recruit. Just horrible, sick people. I mean, unbelievable that this is still happening in the modern world. Where are you going to go from here? Like, what's your vision? What's your goals? Like, this is what I need to get done here in the next 5 years. Now that Trump and Homan are kicking some serious butt with the border, what's next for you?
Well, I think it's not really about myself. What I like to do is I like to educate, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, both in the private sector and in my Women Fighting for America, and exposing and doing a lot of intel behind the scenes. We expose a lot of what's going on right now with China and Iran. I mean, we live in a very dangerous time right now. I think that there might be a misconception that everybody can take this big, deep breath of relief that we've got Trump elected. That couldn't be further from the truth. Right now is not the time to be complicit. Right now is not the time to let our guard down. Our work actually is just now beginning. And because we have a lot of evil in this world, and there's a lot of evil people who will never stop. As a matter of fact, they're ramping up to try to figure out, holy crap, we didn't see this tsunami coming. We have to restructure and figure out how we're going to continue our plans. And so we need to be on our guard. And what I would like for the Trump administration to do, and I'm going to give a directive directly to your listeners. I want you to contact all of your congressional leaders. And I want you to look at all of the executive orders Trump is signing. Those executive orders need to become law, because the next president at a whim can remove all of those executive orders like you saw Biden do. So if those executive orders become a law, that's permanent. They cannot be overturned by another president coming in at the whim of his ideologies. So that's number one. So we need to put pressure on the congressional leaders to take those and make them and write law and pass those laws. And the other thing is that we have to understand we have an enemy, which I believe and many others is the biggest threat to democracy and our constitutional republic around the free Western world, and that is China. And we have to deal with China, and that's what Trump is brilliantly doing with both renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America, by going down and sending Marco Rubio for the Central and South American tour, and including the Panama Canal, because that's strategic. We've been reporting for over 4 years now on how serious the situation is down in the Panama Canal. And whether you've seen through the Darien Gap, which is a huge hotbed to bring up terrorist, illegal activity, drugs, fentanyl, trafficking, you name it, that's the road to hell through the Darien Gap to the United States. Well, the Panama Canal and the foothold that China has been able to have in Central and South America through the Bricks and Road Initiative, including a port in Peru that just opened up in December, which is a deep water port that can house military warships and submarines by China and other entities. I can tell you right now, I'll give you a little insider scoop. Our military has known about this, and they've been freaking out and scrambling to figure out how we're going to have control of other ports in the area to combat this serious threat. And by the way, China also has one in Jamaica, and they also have a military base in Barbados. They also have a spy ring in cybersecurity, highly sophisticated, in Cuba. And lastly, China has what's under the disguise of a space program in Brazil, which is a highly sophisticated spy operation for outside of the United States for satellite systems. And so what you're looking at Trump doing, he's trying to control now our supply chain from a logistics perspective, because if China, which has 27, they own over 27 swatches on both sides of the Panama Canal. They also control the cranes and the operating systems. So they can shut that down with a button. That would squeeze us like a boa constrictor, because most of our supplies that we need desperately for military applications, for our everyday applications, for what you need for banking systems and things like that, all come up through the Panama Canal, chips and all of this. And so we've got to control that, because they can stop and prevent us from having that, which would, in weeks' time, it would be weeks, not months, but weeks where we would be crippled.
Well, we experienced that through COVID, right? What happened to the supply chain that fast, and we lost access to a lot of things really quickly, and it kind of opened a lot of people's eyes. Unfortunately, most people continue to put their head back into the sand after it was supposedly over. And also with the ports, you're spot on. And also with the Chinese ports, is they're way more technologically advanced than we are with automation and everything else. We're still back in the Stone Age compared to what they're able to do. So they're moving things a lot quicker than us. And that's a whole other conversation with unions and people and everything else. But we're back in the Stone Age, and we have to start making some pretty critical decisions here moving forward if we want to even compete and continue with our national security, because if we lose this idea of America, there's nowhere else to go. This is it.
No, you know what I'd really like to see is coming out in World War II, for example, we had to think outside of the box. We had to get very, very creative to be able to put out our war machine, right, to combat communism and the Nazis. And I'd love to see that kind of outside of the box thinking with the president, with this administration's policies for bringing back manufacturing, bringing back pharmaceuticals. Most of our pharmaceuticals are made in China, and God only knows what they're putting in those damn pills. Our aspirin, by gosh, is made in China. So we need to start bringing back all of this that we've outsourced. Thank you, Bill Clinton. Through TPP, we need to start bringing all of this back to the United States, and we need to start manufacturing and making our own goods and services, period. That's it. A strong America is only going to be as strong as our manufacturing is. And what's really interesting, the strategic that he's going after Greenland. Greenland has a lot of natural resources, okay? And so does Central and South America, by the way, but America has incredible, incredible natural resources like lithium and things that we have to protect and defend this great nation. But where the problem in America is we don't have the refineries. We don't have the processing plants, the washing plants that's needed. China does this, by the way, breaking every single EPA rule. You want to talk about climate change BS? China,
they're burning coal.
They're burning it. They're doing whatever to make it cheap. And then the world is buying it. What a bunch of hypocrites, because they know it's all a bunch of hogwash. But anyway,
yeah. So
we have got to get rid of the red tape from the EPA and regulations. And we are the cleanest. We process the cleanest coal. We process the cleanest everything because we have incredible state-of-the-art operational systems that wash all this stuff cleanly. And so we've got to really become a stronghold of all of this manufacturing and coal and processing and washing again and make America strong again from an energy perspective. We only have 2 years because we don't know what's going to happen in the interim. So again, here's another marching order for your listeners. You need to make doggone sure that in 2 years' time, that not only do we keep the House and the Senate, but we bolster our numbers and start getting these people who hate America, who have committed, in my personal and professional opinion, treasonous acts against our country. And if you don't like somebody, then by golly, get out there and run yourself. Start raising the money now. You've got to be the voice for us for the future. And we need to have 4 years of Trump policies just to start even getting our ship back right.
You're spot on. You're speaking my language now. And everything that you just said, let's go back to energy. I mean, because we're just having our hands and feet both tied, our hands behind our back, and we're gagged, right, with regulations. And so here we are. We have India and China burning coal. They don't care. We have China who's going to surpass us in nuclear reactors and nuclear energy by 2030. You know, that is the most common sense energy dense solution that you can put out there. So we need to start building those reactors so we can make our energy, right, cheap, which is going to allow manufacturing, everything that you just said, to start being able to compete at the world stage. And you're right. I mean, you say we have 15 years of work. I mean, we really do. Like even people, like you said, like earlier when you made the comment about people are just like, hey, Trump won, we're done. No, Trump stopped the bleeding. And we have 15 years of work of getting good America First candidates in at all levels of office, right? And you're right. I mean, we have to make sure that we win, especially here in the state of Michigan. We have an opportunity not only get a Senate seat back, but take our state back from the terrible three, Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and horrible Governor Whitmer, and start bringing some common sense in, because we have to continue this train moving in the right direction, because if not, we're going right back and it's going to get worse here real quick.
Well, we'll be derailed, and it won't look, it'll make Ohio look like a walk in a daisy field.
And the good part, Christie, is it's not like the Democrats are learning their lesson. They've actually literally doubled down with their radical ideology. I mean, watching the stuff with USAID, Like, and I made this comment on one of my shows here earlier in the week. Like, if you just Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, I don't care who you are. Let's just all get around a table and we say, you know what? We're going to make sure that our tax-paying dollars are actually going where they need to go. There's no money laundering. There's really good stuff that we're doing, and we're going to cut back the waste. Any normal person would say, yeah, that's great. Let's do it. And what you're seeing is, because their hands in the cookie jar, we all know it, that all the freaking illegal money that they're getting is going to be cut off, and they're freaking out. I mean, so all you have to do is watch, and you can say, yep, you're all dirty birds, right? Which we all know. Politics is a shitty, horrible game. But it is interesting to watch them double down, especially with the indoctrination of our kids in the public schools. Even here in the state of Michigan, the Michigan High School Association with athletics has basically said, nope, we're not going to follow President Trump. We're going to still allow boys to play in girls' sports. And majority of Americans do not want that hot garbage. They don't. They voted for President Trump, the popular vote. They don't want it, but they're doing us a favor, and they doubled down on this radical shit. And if we just message the right way, stay unified, we win.
Well, you know, the left's righteous outrage is nothing but a smokescreen for their corruption. He who yells and screams the loudest has more to hide. And I wrote a brief. Actually, I just finished an intelligence brief on USAID. You know, my organization has been sounding the alarm for over 4.5 years on the NGOs. And it's not just USAID. USAID is a conduit that funnels money to a lot of other NGOs around the world, and including inside the United States. And also through the grant program. It's not just about USAID. We have grant programs and stuff where a lot of these NGOs are able to get grants. For example, Catholic Charities, $1 billion to help funnel illegals into the country. And so this has always been a little dirty secret that this is how it's a sophisticated money laundering operation, basically, is what it is. Whether it's the military industrial complex sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Do you really think for 1 minute that all of that money reaches Ukraine to buy military weapons? And by the way, this is something I'm really intricately involved in, because we were approached by the Ukrainian government to do some things I can't get into. And I'm going to tell you, there's paybacks and there's fluff, and that's through backdoor deals and through giving Democrat, like the NID and Soros's funding, his Arabella and different types of funding that they have to pay back the Democratic Party, which funds the Democratic's candidacies, right? So that's what they're screaming so much, because they've been found out and a light has been shown on that. You know, I was thinking about this, and if anybody wants to go get that brief, because it talks about so the USAID was, by the way, it was an executive order by President John F. Kennedy in 1961, and it was hijacked by the CIA. And the CIA, and I go in depth about the CIA's intricate involvement with USAID and how they use that funneling to destabilize other countries, which we won't have time to get in today, but it's a very factual, interesting read in the brief on one of my social media platforms. I'll see if my team can actually put it on Women Fighting for America's website. Got to read it. But if you looked at how much money that we've spent for these ridiculous spending, right? $30 million for Sesame Street in Iraq. You know, if Hurricane Helene, and me and my team have been on the ground in Hurricane Helene and out in California. I sit on a board of a couple of humanitarian organizations that are fantastic. And could you imagine if we took 30 million, let's just take the $30 million figure. And we took that $30 million and we went house to house of every home that no longer exists on its foundation. And we already know that through loopholes and the corruption of insurance companies that they're allowed to get away with not paying, again, because there's lobbyists and blah, 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 right? Corruption. So imagine if we took and said, you know what, we're writing you a $250,000 check. Here you go. How much that would go? Isn't that what USAID is supposed to be for, or FEMA and all of this, our taxpayer funded dollars to help the most vulnerable, us legal American citizens when we need it the most? Or how about California, $450 billion it's going to take to rebuild. But I agree, until California turns away from their evil, wicked corruption ways, we need to have major strings attached to any funding that's given to them. But that would be better served of our USAID funds or FEMA funds, actually helping people rebuild their homes. And how about lastly, the veterans who are sleeping on the street, who have served this great country, who have seen horrible things in theater that has messed with their brains, that they can't function anymore in society because of the horrible things that they've had to endure, and they're living and sleeping on the streets. No, we should be able to treat them with respect and the dignity that they deserve. I love Tunnels to Tower. Build them a home, an apartment, get them help that they need, and get them off the streets. That would be a better use of our funding.
Absolutely spot on. It's horrific. Like, it's tyrannical. You're taking all of our tax-paying dollars, you're throwing them overseas, screw the average ordinary American, and screw the ones especially are damaged by some kind of disaster, whether it be a hurricane, a flood, a fire, or whatever that is. I mean, and that's why you're hearing, just like you said, the screaming, because they know that they're going to be caught here now. Hopefully, God willing. And here's what I hope, because we always see this. I get excited. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching, they get excited. Like, finally, we're going to get some damn accountability, which we never get, right? Are we going to get accountability this time? Having Fauci getting pardoned, right, was the biggest slap in the face.
He's not pardoned. We need to stop using that word. Just because a preemptive pardon is not a legal pardon, by the way. And we need to have some incredible scholars and some constitutional lawyers, and we need to sue the hell out, because let me tell you, a preemptive pardon has never been done. It is not. You have to be charged with a crime to get a pardon, and it's not holding up. So we can't legitimize his preemptive pardons. Every single one of those individuals should be prosecuted and held to the standards of our law system and our justice system. 100%. And I do believe we're going to get justice. It's going to come not as rapidly as we like, and I think it's intelligent that it's not as rapidly as we like.
Yep.
We need to make sure that we have all of the evidence, that it's so irrefutable that even these liberal judges, if they did try to stop this from moving forward, the backlash in the public opinion space would be so great that they could not do anything about it. So I think it's being done brilliantly by Pam Bondi and others behind the scenes. So I believe we will see justice, maybe not as quickly as all of us want to.
And I think a big role in that too is, Zuckerberg is Zuckerberg, but with X being owned by Elon Musk, Trump wouldn't have won if Elon wouldn't have bought X. And I think that's what's interesting to watch, like the illusion that the Democrats have been able to create over the past decade, because they've had control of all these most social media platforms, which is the news, right? It's people giving information and sharing information and everything else. But before, when they used to do things or say things, anyone that stood up and tried to hold them accountable was censored, or you were shadow banned, or you were deplatformed, like we were several times over, right? So these Democrats created this reality, this alternate reality in their own mind, which was an illusion of this is what people want. And they just continued to build upon all these radical ideologies and get in the way, because 10 years ago, we would have had a conversation about porn being in schools. We'd be like, there's no way that would ever happen, right? There's no way that you're going to have this sexual indoctrination classes taught to elementary schools. That's just not common sense. And here we are. We would have never said that men competing in women's sports, let's just throw Title IX out the damn window, right? That's okay. But they had an illusion. Now, if you watch and you follow anybody, like, because I follow these corrupt politicians like Dana Nessel, Jocelyn Benson, and Governor Whitmer here in the state of Michigan, when they post something or when they say something, do one of the little social media videos, they get attacked. They get held accountable. That did not happen in the past. Mm-hmm. And so with what you're saying with accountability and the pressure that we can put on, we weren't able to put the necessary pressure last time. I lived through it. You lived through it. Anyone that stood up against the unconstitutional lockdowns and the mandates, you were killing grandma. You were censored. You were gone. And so that's where I'm hoping, where you just said the public, we the people, we have the power. We really do. And if we can just follow through and hold that accountability and keep people awakened, because just like you said, they're going to pick their ball up and go home, and they think everything's hunky-dory, that President Trump's in office now. It's not, folks. We have 15 years of hard work.
You know what I would really like to see with Zuckerberg and all of these media conglomerates is to have social media reparations.
Amen, sister.
I think instead of having us, I think Trump's administration could have talks and say, we're asking you to go in and you need to do an audit over the last 5 years of everybody's social media accounts, anybody that has been shadow banned, removed, etc. Not only do you have to restore them, but you need to look at where they would be, and you need to do whatever you need to do to help bolster their presence to a huge status where people have a lot of followers and things like that, or monetary, one of the two. So social media reparations, that would be a really good use of reparations.
Christie, that would be absolutely fantastic.
That's a suggestion out there. So if anybody push that idea out there to President Trump, you have my full approval.
And it's so frustrating because and it happens to a lot of good people, and they just want to get their voices and they got good information, and you still see the censorship and stuff. It still exists. They're still deplatforming and everything else. But yeah, I agree 100% is allow these people to have a voice, because that's what most people just want. They just want to be heard. And guess what? If you got good content and you got truth, people are going to follow you. You shouldn't be censored for speaking the truth.
Even if you're not speaking the truth, and I'm not an advocate for somebody who doesn't speak the truth. I think that it hurts everything that we're trying to do and undermine. And I can't stand people who put stuff out there just for clickbait.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. But at the end of the day, we have freedom of speech, freedom of ideologies, right? So the very thing that they're trying to squash is the very thing that has allowed our freedom of speech to allow the left to propagate and do the things that they do. But it's healthy when it's on both sides of the fence. And we have to be able to have free dialogue without thought police, right? And so it's very dangerous, and it becomes a very dangerous society. I have a choice. I love all of these, weak people. I don't have to listen to something. If I don't like something I'm hearing, I have something called push a button and turn it off or turn the channel. I don't have to listen to you. And that's the freedom of choice. And we forgot about our own personal accountability. And I think we need to get back to common sense, accountability for ourselves, our actions, and how we're conducting ourselves. I'm fortunate because, I've got a dad and a mom. My mom passed away, rest her soul, but my parents were hard workers. My dad was in the construction business. My mother was a school bus driver when I was younger. She did whatever she could to keep food on the table. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. But my dad's from Kentucky, and he is a Kentucky boy through and through. And I can tell you the one thing they taught me: there is no gray. Yeah. We live in a black and white world. Your word is your word. And it's your oak, and it's who you are. And the integrity and being honest and always doing the best and giving back is so important. And that's what my parents instilled in me. And I'm going to be honest with you, Garrett, if you ask some of the people around me, it's funny, like, you either like me or you don't. There's really no in between. It's because I'm a direct person and I'm honest, probably to a fault. I probably need to learn not to be so direct because people can't handle my personality. I'm a full-on A. But it's the reason why I'm able to accomplish the things I do. It's the reason why I'm able to go out in the field and rescue children from the most disgusting, horrific things. It's the reason why I'm able to look at people who have been slaughtered or hurt and be that voice for them, right? Because God created me this way. And we need to understand each one of us have a unique gift and talent, and we need to bring it to the table to save this country and to leave this world better than we found it.
Amen. And yeah, absolutely. Not everyone has to carry the flag. I mean, everybody has a role, and there's certain rules for everyone, and identify your skill set and then go after it. And I have to go back. My mama was also a school bus driver. So that's why you got that big old grin from me. And I remember when I was little, I think I was like 3 years old, I sat on the dashboard and she'd let me do the buttons. Like, we all allowed to do that these days.
Oh, you were lucky. My mom did not let me do any of that stuff. She was like, nope, get in the back of the bus.
Get in the back of the bus. So, fantastic.
I want to say this, I don't make apologies for who I am and my personality. I don't. We have to own who we are, and not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. I always say I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but make no mistake, I'm a very honest person and I'm the best friend you could ever have. But if you cross me or you're not doing something, I'm going to call you out. And it doesn't matter what political affiliation you lie with. Corruption is corruption. And there's good and there's evil in this world. And we have to all be not afraid to stand up and speak truth to evil. And, with this Me Too movement and this political correctness, it's about silencing you. You're a bigot, you're a racist, you're this. No, we need to be able to call it out no matter what your gender is, what your sexual orientation is, whatever that looks like. Evil is evil. And we need to not be silenced, and you need to own who you are. As long as you're not hurting somebody else and you're doing what's right and what's true, that's what we need to get back to in this country. And I think that we would be better off for it.
I 100% agree with everything that you just said. You're spot on. You're spot on. Christie, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your drive. You are an inspiration to many people. And like I always say, you just never know what this conversation is going to lead. You may just let us fire underneath somebody's butt to get involved in some way. Maybe it's a school board, city commission, I don't know, to have a conversation, send a message, I don't know. But that impact is a ripple effect, and you are living proof of what can happen when someone has a vision and a drive and believes what they are doing is for the good. Magic happens, and you can inspire millions, if not billions, across this world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Garrett, for having me on. I thank you. Thank your audience. Please get involved. God bless this country. And you know what I'm really excited about? We're going to be celebrating 250 years of this beautiful country that was given to us. We need to understand the significance of 250 years and what the founding fathers did for us. As flawed as America is, she's the greatest country ever birthed. And we're the protectors of the innocent. We're protectors of Israel. It's a great responsibility. Don't let her die. Don't let her light go out. Roll up your sleeves, and now is the time to fight while we have all of the forces for good going with us.
Awesome. Well said. Thank you so much, Christie. God bless you.
God bless.
Bye-bye. Wow. Great interview. Christie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And that's what I'll continue to do, folks, is try to get people on here to give you information, because you don't hear a lot about the child trafficking stuff anymore. And it's obviously a horrific, horrible situation. And thank goodness we have people like her who are involved behind the scenes. And so, like she said, don't sit on the sidelines. Stand up, voice your concerns, be involved, because evil wins when good people do nothing. That's for sure. Thanks for tuning in today. Until next time, God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan. Of course, and always, God bless these United States.